you can hear us.
Oh,
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Please accept
Hare
my
Krishna.
respectful obeisances. All glories to you and all
Hare
glories.
Krishna Govind, Hare Krishna Master.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Were we going to do live too, Guru Maharaj, or just the recording? Okay. Okay. I see this. Like it's streaming now.
Oh.
Recording. Okay. Very good.
We are good to go.
Yes. So we're starting from second canto, chapter 1, text 37. I'm gonna try this Sanskrit. Ramananam Kshatra Bhujo Mahatma Vidurud Angrishrita Krishna Varnaha Anabhidabhijya Kano Papano Dravyatma Kaha Karma Vitana Yogaha. Translation and purport. His Divine Grace, Sri A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Virat Purusha's face is the Brahmanas. His arms are the Kshatriyas. His thighs are the Vaishyas. And the Sudras are under the protection of his feet. All the worshipable demigods are also overtaken by him. And it is the duty of everyone to perform sacrifices with feasible goods to appease the Lord. Purport. Monotheism is practically suggested here. Offering sacrifices to many demigods under different names is mentioned in the Vedic literatures, but the suggestion made in this verse is that all those varieties of demigods are included in the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are only the parts and parcels of the original whole. Similarly, the divisions of the orders of human society, namely the Brahmanas, the intelligent class, the Kshatriyas, the administrators, Vaisyas, the mercantile community, and the Sudras, the laborer class, are all included in the body of the Supreme. As such, sacrifice by every one of them in terms of pleasing the Supreme by feasible goods is recommended. Generally, the sacrifice is offered with clarified butter and grains, but with the progress of time, human society has produced varieties of goods by transforming materials supplied by God's material nature. Human society, therefore, must learn to offer sacrifices not only with clarified butter, but also with other manufactured goods in the propagation of the Lord's glory, and that will bring about perfection in human society. The intelligent class of men, or Brahmanas, may give direction for such sacrifices in consultation with the previous acharyas. The administrators may give all facilities to perform such sacrifices. The Vaisya class or mercantile community who produce such goods may offer them for sacrifice, and the Sudra class may offer their manual labor for the successful termination of such sacrifice. Thus, by the cooperation of all classes of human beings, the sacrifice recommended in this age, namely the sacrifice of congregational chanting of the holy name of the Lord, may be executed for the common welfare of all the people of the world. So, Srila Prabhupada, he, right from the very beginning, he's emphasizing monotheism, and he's connecting how, well, specifically, he's talking about demigods and how there is the culture of, in the West, we don't really know a lot about it, but the culture of demigods and multiple personalities that if you pray to them, then they're going to give you something in return, wealth or knowledge or rain, so many different things that if we pray to these demigods, these personalities, that they give us something in return. And so without uh, without knowledge of the supreme, or without knowledge of where these demigods are getting their powers from, then one might think that this demigod is themselves powerful enough to worship, and that there's no one else that we need to worship outside of this demigod. Or I can just worship all the demigods, and my worship is perfect because I don't have any knowledge of where they're getting their power, or who's empowering them to give me the things that I'm asking for. And so in this verse, we're like Srila Prabhupada is highlighting here, is that ultimately the demigods, they get all their power from Krishna. And so if you want to please the demigods, or if you want to get the benefit of what it's like to worship the demigod, then you just have to worship Krishna. By worshiping Krishna, who is the original whole, then whatever kind of benefits that we would get from worshiping this demigod, worshiping that demigod, it all comes to us by worshiping Krishna. And so just emphasizing that, I mean, one thing that came to my mind here is that we don't have a lot of time, especially with our lives being shorter. We don't have a lot of time to try and figure out things on our own and think, whoa, well, what will happen? Let me just mentally kind of figure out what would happen if I just worship Lord Indra for my life, for the rest of my life. What will happen if I worship Lord Brahma for the rest of my life? And let me just figure it out. Let me try to figure out things on my own and go kind of step by step. Well, what is? We don't talk about the Vedas because that's really complicated, and I don't have full knowledge of all the Vedic injunctions. But what I mean to say is that, like Srila Prabhupada here and our acharyas, is that they're cutting through all of the steps that we can avoid, all these different paths and different ways that we can ultimately get to Krishna. But it's like the longer route. If you want to go the route of worshiping demigods, you're going to eventually come to the point where you realize and you understand that the demigod I'm worshiping, his power comes from Krishna. And so rather than taking lifetimes and lifetimes of worshiping this demigod or worshiping that demigod, which considering how long we've been here, we most likely have gone that route. So rather than going that route again, Krishna and Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, they're highlighting and emphasizing the point to just go directly to Krishna. Just always reminding us, just go to Krishna, worship Krishna, think about Krishna, just go to Krishna. Everything that we're doing and anything that we can do, ultimately it's the best use of it is in Krishna's service. And so just that kind of reminder keeps our head on track, because even as devotees, sometimes we can get sidetracked with different things. I know, just as an example, like astrology, or maybe our diet, things like that, that it's good. It's not like we don't want to pay attention to that, but sometimes Maya can be really tricky, and we can divert a lot, like more attention than needed into astrology, or more attention than needed into our diet. And it makes me think of, there was a pastime with one disciple of Srila Prabhupada who had like the big, I think they're called rudras, or like the big, that big necklace, or I don't know what you call them, but
yeah, like I remember the best a little bit. He had I thought it was like one of those gemstone or something.
Okay, maybe there's multiple.
Or it could have been if you're talking about the root, like the big thing, like the root rakshas.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, because I think what the devotee was saying was that his like Rahu or something like that was like in an inauspicious placement or something like that.
Yes.
Oh yeah, okay. And so to counteract how Rahu or this planet was like in the inauspicious place, he was counteracting it by wearing these big beads on his neck. And when Srila Prabhupada saw that, I don't remember exactly what he said, but basically he told them, like, take them off. Like, you don't have to. You're chanting Hare Krishna. That's all the protection that you need, from what I remember in the pastime being. And so that's what stands out to me in this verse. It's just that, again, that reminder of that, by chanting Hare Krishna, by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, by thinking about Krishna, we are doing the best service that we can. We're making the best use of our limited time that we have. So these are just some points that I wanted to share. And Hare Krishna, Bhakti Rich. Nice to see you.
Hare Krishna, Bhakti Rich.
Hare Krishna, Govinda, Hare Krishna, Lavanga, Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Yeah, if anyone else would want to add on to it, or if anyone had any questions or any other points to bring up.
Yeah, your point about astrology. Actually, I had heard from a Prabhupada disciple that devotees, at one point, they started going to astrologers. And I don't think this was every single devotee, because the movement got quite big. But I know some group of devotee at one time, they were going to astrologers for like auspicious times, for Harinam, like distribution, things like this. And at one point, Srila Prabhupada said, don't worry about this. Just go out. So yeah, we can get very hung up on these types of things. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was actually an expert astrologer, but he gave it up at one point, and I believe it was him. He would look at somebody's palm and go, all bad, because it really, at the end of the day, most charts, if you look at it, you'll see good and bad karma kind of mixed. It's like a screenshot of your birth chart is like a screenshot of where you're at in this cycle of samsara and what you got coming to you in this life, both good and bad. So your good karma that's coming to you is just because of your previous pious deeds, and then your bad karma coming to you is just because of your impious deeds. But the thing is, if we keep creating karma, then we can just continue on and on and on in the cycle. Ultimately, it's all, for the devotee, it's all bad, because karma, whether good or bad, it keeps us here in the material world. So this is the beautiful thing about Srimad Bhagavatam, is that it kicks out anything, any belief, any ideology that you think is going to save you. So in the Vedas, they use astrology. It can be helpful for guiding the children, but also, and there's things like demigod worship, and we should respect the demigods. But ultimately, like this verse is saying here, Krishna is the source of all that. So when one approaches the Vedas, they had to be very careful, because the Vedas can be like a kalpavriksha tree. If you're coming to it with your contaminated consciousness, you can find kind of what maybe you're looking for. Oh, I want material desires. Okay, there's a Veda for that. I want jnana. Okay, I want to merge with the Brahman. There's a Veda for that. So the beautiful thing about hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam is that we're not just hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam, but Prabhupada, the pure devotee, because he's not coming at this from a contaminated consciousness. He's pure. He's actually seeing Krishna personally, and said Krishna's personally writing these purports. So when we're reading, what's been written by Srila Prabhupada, this is coming from Krishna directly, uncontaminated. So this is the importance of actually hearing these things from the pure devotee, is that it purifies our contaminated consciousness. Because otherwise, we might be just reading these things and we could take it in the completely wrong way, or we could see something different. So Prabhupada's laying it all out here. How things work in this Virat Rupa. How in society you have, ultimately, everything is meant for sacrifice. So you had the Brahmanas that are the intelligent class, that they're meant for guiding the Kshatriyas and like the sacrifice. The Kshatriyas are meant for providing all the necessities for the sacrifice. Like the Kshatriyas make sure everyone's protected, and the Vaishyas, they're producing things for the sacrifice, and the Sudras are assisting for the sacrifice. So it really simplifies this varnashram system. That really everybody's position is ultimately meant for the service of Krishna. It's not about, and in that sense, it's not about higher or lower. So then Prabhupada ends this, like he ends almost every purport where it's talking about some sort of sacrifice. In this age, the sacrifice is the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. But this purport, what I get from this verse and this purport, is just laying it all out for us. Ultimately, Krishna is the source of all this, and what is all this for? Life is meant for sacrifice, offering sacrifice to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, engaging everything in His service. And if we don't do that, then we get kind of entangled. Like I was reading this experiment today where this scientist, he wanted to do this experiment to see what would happen if people had an abundance of resources, too much comfort, and no sacrifice. So they took rats. Humans like to experiment on rats. And they put them in an area where they didn't have to worry about disease, they didn't have to worry about survival, and they didn't have to worry about home. So they have plenty of food, nice, comfortable place. They were healthy. And the result of this was it started with 8 rats, and they started multiplying like crazy. And then after they started multiplying like crazy, they started breaking off into social groups. And then after they started breaking off into social groups, the ones that couldn't find a group, they stayed kind of in the middle. They were social outcasts. And then the group started fighting amongst each other and killing each other and even eating each other. And then the women started, the female rats started abandoning their children. And then the rats basically gave up mating altogether. And they went extinct. And the population peaked at 2,200 rats. And they had enough food for 5,000. So the thing is, it kind of shows, when you have so much comfort and no sacrifice, how it can be entangling. So that's why the Srimad Bhagavatam tells us over and over again that the purpose of this life is for sacrifice, for offering everything to Krishna, for understanding that it's not ours.
Yeah, that's Bhagavad Gita. That's all the points that Arjuna was making. The rats, the scientists got to see the Bhagavad Gita in action. Where yeah, exactly. Where what the points that Arjuna was making, that the unwanted progeny will happen. And that was one thing that stood out to me. I don't remember about I don't remember about fighting though or anything like that. But
well, there's fighting. There's fighting to begin with, right? Wars,
yeah. That's
because Arjuna doesn't understand that it's Arjuna at the beginning. He seemingly doesn't understand that this is what Krishna wants.
Yeah.
So in general, war is they start with the fighting, and then the women are degraded because they're taken over by the people that win, and then they produce unwanted population, and then society goes to nothing.
Yeah. Well, that's a really nice, it's an amazing experiment that they did. I'm wondering if the scientists took anything from it, if the message there was absorbed in any kind of way for them. But it must have been eye-opening in some sense for them.
Yeah, it was eye-opening for me because I realized even if we manage to create a utopia on Earth where everyone has everything they need, enough food, enough shelter, then we'll just artificially create our own problems.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, give me 1 minute.
Okay, no problem.
maybe you could start on the next verse.
Okay, well, let's see. Does Dr. Rich have any comments? Or should we go on?
Sorry about that, guys. I had trouble unmuting myself. Only comment was what you just brought up, Lavanga, about astrology, because I just want to say I was reading the Bhagavatam today and it talked about astrology, and it just was fascinating to me to think that if it was an expert, they could tell me like what's going to happen with my life in the future, and I have a hard time, believing that someone could actually do that, but that's what stood out to me, and I really I just hopped in and I'm having a bit of a difficult time concentrating because I'm doing other things, but I appreciated what you said, and I think what your take on this was very in depth, and it kind of took me deeper into what Govinda was just talking about, and I commend you on that, Lavanga. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, bro. Thanks for your comment. All right, I think I'll go to the next verse. We'll do text 38 now. Yanasa Vishvara Digahasya Yasani Vesha Kahito Mayate Sandaryate Smin Bapushista Manas Vabudya Nayatosti Kinchit. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Thus I have explained to you the gross, material, gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead. One who seriously desires liberation concentrates his mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more than this in the material world. All right, purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:10, the Supreme Personality of Godhead has verily explained that material nature is only an order-carrying agent of his. She is one of the different potencies of the Lord, and she acts under his direction only. As the Supreme transcends the Lord, he simply casts a glance over the material principle, and thus the agitation of matter begins. As the resultant actions are manifested, one after another, by 6 kinds of gradual differentiations, all material creation is moving in that way, and thus it appears and disappears in due course. Less intelligent persons with a poor fund of knowledge cannot accommodate the thought of this inconceivable potency of the Lord Shri Krishna, by which he appears just like a human being. 9:11. His appearance in the material world as one of us is also his causeless mercy upon the fallen souls. He is transcendental to all material conceptions, but by his unbounded mercy upon his pure devotees, he comes down and manifests himself as the personality of Godhead. Materialistic philosophers and scientists are too much engrossed in the atomic energy and gigantic situation of the universal form, and they offer respect more seriously to the external phenomenal feature of material manifestations. Oh, sorry. Let me repeat that. And the gigantic and they offer respect more seriously to the external phenomenal feature of the material manifestation than to the nominal principle of spiritual existence. The transcendental form of the Lord is beyond the jurisdiction of such materialistic activities, and it is very difficult to conceive that the Lord can be simultaneously localized and all-pervasive. Because the materialistic philosophers and scientists think of everything in terms of their own experience, they are unable to accept the personal feature of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is kind enough to demonstrate the Virat feature of his transitive form, and herein Srila Shukadeva Goswami has vividly described that this form has vividly described this form of the Lord. He concludes that there is nothing beyond this gigantic feature of the Lord. Sorry. None of the materialistic thoughtful men can go beyond this conception of the gigantic form. The minds of the materialistic men are flickering and constantly changing from one aspect to another. Therefore, one is advised to think of the Lord by thinking of any part of his gigantic body, and by one's intelligence only can one think of him in any manifestation of the material world. The forest, the hill, the ocean, the man, the animal, the demigod, the bird, the beast, or anything else. Each and every item of the material manifestation entails a part of the body of the gigantic form, and thus the flickering mind can be fixed in the Lord only in nothing else. This process of concentrating on the different bodily parts of the Lord will gradually diminish the demonic challenge of godlessness and bring about gradual development of devotional service to the Lord. Everything being a part and parcel of the complete whole, the neophyte student will gradually realize the hymns of the Sri Upanishad, which state that the Supreme Lord is everywhere, and thus he will learn the art of not committing any offense to the body of the Lord. This sense of God-mindedness will diminish one's pride in challenging the existence of God. Thus one can learn to show respect to everything, for all things are part and parcels of the supreme body. Hold on, that was a long word, so I need to get some water.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Once again, since we had a long purport, I'll just read the translation again so we can kind of remember where we are. I have thus explained to you the gross, material, gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead. One who seriously desires liberation concentrates his mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more than this in the material world. So, what I'm getting from this verse, Prabhupada, he brings up the point that the material nature is the order-carrying agent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that she's acting under his direction. And it explains how everything is started in motion when the Lord cast his glance over the material nature. And this is the reason why the living entities are here, because we had some desire to enjoy independently. And Krishna cast his glance over the material nature so that the material world can then form, and the living entities can have a place for trying to enjoy independently and trying to fulfill their flickering material desires, as is stated in this purport, that the mind of man is very flickering. And so Krishna is kind. It's mentioned here that he appears in this world for his devotees, to please his devotees. But for the materialistic person, they can't conceive of Krishna. And I was having this conversation with a friend today, and we were talking about how when Krishna appeared on the planet, there were some people that knew he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but not everyone knew that he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of their consciousness. So you had people on the planet when Krishna was here that were materialistic, that didn't want to be devotees of him. But still, by seeing Krishna, they got some benefit, but they weren't able to understand who he really was. And still to this day, people can't get it. This Srila Prabhupada brings up this verse from Bhagavad Gita. Let's see, where was it? 9:11. He says, Krishna appears, less intelligent persons with poor funded knowledge cannot accommodate the thought of this incalculable potency of Lord Shri Krishna, by which he appears just like a human being. His appearance in the material world as one of us is also his causeless mercy upon fallen souls. So Krishna appears in this world. He acts like an ordinary human being, but people can't conceive of him. And so, because of this, another aspect of Krishna's mercy, as mentioned in this purport, and Prabhupada's brought this up before, but whenever something is repeated in Shastra, it's said that we should really pay attention to it. It's important. And so Prabhupada brings this up again, that for people, who can't conceive of this idea of the personal form of Krishna, they can meditate on this Virat Rupa. They can think of, let's see, let me scroll down here so I can quote exactly what Prabhupada says here. Therefore, one is advised to think of the Lord by thinking of any part of his gigantic body, and by one's intelligence only can one think of him in any manifestation of the material world: the forest, the hill, the ocean, the man, the animal, the demigod, the bird, the beast, or anything else. Each and every item of the material manifestation entails a part of the body of the gigantic form. So you'll notice often people who like to travel, go in nature. They'll start to have somewhat of a spiritual experience. Many people that I know, when they come to Krishna consciousness, they had some experience when they were traveling. They were out in nature. They saw big mountains. They saw the ocean, things like this. So Krishna, out of his mercy, for one who's not able to see his form, meditate on this form, or for one who's very materialistic, they're not ready for that. This Virat Rupa is there, so that one can meditate, or one can think of, see God in the forest, or in the hill, or in the ocean, in the animal, or even in the man, and they can make advancement in that way. They can start to see how everything comes from a supreme being, or at least what this helps you do. Maybe you meditate on the ocean. You can understand that the ocean is greater than you. It's bigger, it's more vast. So that that there's something more bigger than you, more greater, more vast than you are. Also with the demigods, ultimately Krishna is the source of all demigods, as stated in the previous verse. But one of the things about demigod worship that helps people make advancement is that it at least gets them open to the idea that they have to have some realization to even begin the demigod worship. So they have to have a realization that there is a being higher than me, that I am not the all complete absolute truth. And of course, with demigod worship, you have to be a little bit humble, because you have to approach these beings in a humble way, so you understand that they're greater than you. So this is Krishna's arrangement to gradually bring back his part and parcels. And thus, by doing this, they have realization of this verse that Srila Prabhupada quotes in Sri Upanishad. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vishishate. How everything is ultimately part. Krishna is the supreme whole, and everything is ultimately produced of the supreme whole. So this meditation on the Virat Rupa, it gradually brings one to this point. And then later they can make advancement onto personalism. So that's what I got from this verse. Do any of you have any thoughts? Yes, Rich.
Well, I know I've asked this question so many times before to everybody, but we talk about meditating on the impersonal form. Is that, to my understanding, meditate, like you were just saying, like the ocean or the mountains are his bones, and the trees are his hairs, and I forget what else, but like you said, because I can't see Krishna, in his natural form, so it's helpful to me to look at the I guess it's the universal form. Even though I haven't really practiced it, it makes a lot of sense, and it's easy because I don't have that vision, So it's, I guess, just like a starting point.
Yeah, it can be very helpful. It's how we start to see Krishna everywhere. Because the pure devotee, they're always thinking of Krishna with what they see, kind of like when a mother sees the shoes of her child, she thinks of her child. Or when you see, maybe you have, a very dear relative of yours and they leave something in your house. So when you see that object, you think of your friend or your relative. So in that way, like that, the pure devotee, when they see something, they think of how it comes from Krishna. So this is one way that we can train our minds. I know when I would go to the beach, I think of how Krishna says, out of all bodies of water, I am the ocean. And then that puts the mind on Krishna. You see the sunset, you can think of how in Bhagavad Gita chapter 10, Krishna is talking about how, I think it's chapter 10, about how he is the sun. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think I had to look that up. But yeah, that's there too. You can think of Krishna when you see the sun. Think of Krishna when you see the rain. Because ultimately Indra is in control of the weather, right? But Indra gets his powers from Krishna. Yeah. Or when you look up in the sky and you see, because before the rain, you have these big, huge, dark clouds. So it's like Krishna is like a newly formed rain cloud. So, in this Virat Rupa, it also is just another way in which we can see Krishna kind of in nature. So.
And excuse me, I probably don't need to ask, but I just wanted to ask, you could take that philosophy into like beyond our planet, like take it into outer space and, like the stars and the galaxies and, the solar system, like that personally for me is helpful. I just, I need all those, like visuals, to help me out.
Yeah, you can even expand it like that and think about the universe, right? So it says there's millions of universes coming from the pores of Mahavishnu. So when you think about our universe, or not, actually it says unlimited universes. Let me quote that right. Unlimited universes coming from the pores of Mahavishnu. So think about our universe and how vast that is. I don't even think we've been to the edge of our universe. At least for what I know, science hasn't been there yet. So we haven't even been to the end, and yet Mahavishnu has unlimited universes coming out of his pores. So
We haven't even with the ocean fully.
Yeah, actually when I was studying oceanography, I took an oceanography class, I guess maybe back in 2011, it's a long time ago. The deepest part of the Pacific Ocean is the Marina Trench. And we hadn't even been to the bottom of that yet. And I think now they've touched the bottom of it, but we haven't really been able to explore it extensively because it's dark down there. The pressure is so great. It's hard to do. It's hard to get in. It said though, when you go down there, science has said it's like a whole another world. There's all these different creatures that you can't even imagine, up here. So it's like going to a different planet almost, going that deep in the ocean. But yeah, just to bring it back, this all, you can see this and you can think, wow, how if this is inconceivable, like how great is Krishna? Krishna is like so much like greater than this. So yeah, this is how we can train our mind to be thinking of Krishna at every moment. So this is good, Rich. This is good, Dr. Rich. Do you have anything you like to add, Kevin?
Yeah, another dimension of it too, and yeah, these are very nice realizations. But another dimension that I was thinking about was how Srila Prabhupada talks about Krishna. His appearance in the material world as one of us is also his causeless mercy upon the fallen soul. So, as with everything, there's different points, like there's different, like, how is it his mercy? There's different ways of looking at it. Oh, well, it's his mercy like in this way, or it's his mercy in that way. But the way that I was thinking about, especially with what we were talking about with the ocean and the forest, and just when we're talking about how if we look at the ocean and we can think, well, like the verse in the Bhagavad Gita that that Krishna, he says that he is the ocean. That we can, when we see the ocean, we can look at it in that way. And then, but there's another dimension to it, where since Krishna appeared on this earth, he was here and he looked just like a human being. That means that he had pastimes, that he had activities that he did on this planet. And so, at least, personally, sometimes philosophy can be a little bit dry and I can't really connect with it. I can intellectually like understand it and want to think about it and hear about the philosophy, but sometimes it can be a little bit dry. But if I think about pastimes, it adds more. It like adds more color, and it's easier to think about Krishna. It's easier to talk about Krishna or remember Krishna because there's like an activity associated with Krishna now, and there's actually like a history. I know growing up, I was really into history, or I still am. I like history and learning about different cultures and things, and just reading about all these different things that happen. I like to read, and so um, that's like a different dimension that we can do the same thing. We can look at the ocean, and we can think about Krishna's pastimes in different bodies of water. How you rowed a boat with the gopis, or we think about Lord Mahaprabhu or Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and how he would throw himself into the river in his ecstasies, and so these kind of meditations can also bring more color, more deeper connection with remembering Krishna, because there's this other dimension that Srila Prabhupada is talking about is Krishna's causeless mercy. It's his mercy that he's enacting these pastimes and he's doing all these things for our own benefit. It gives us something to think about, something to talk about, and makes it easier. It makes the process easier for us because ultimately, Krishna consciousness or spiritual life, it's supposed to be attractive. It's supposed to be something that grabs our heart, and we just naturally want to commit to it and naturally want to practice this spiritual path. And so, if there's no, if the spiritual path is not so attractive and it's not really grabbing us, then it's difficult to continue practicing it every day, because that's what the practice is, that with spiritual life, it's something that we're not doing like once a week or once a month or once every Janmashtami, once a year. It's something that, we're looking to commit ourselves to every single day. But for us to have that kind of commitment, there has to be some kind of natural attraction. And when that natural attraction is there, even when things are getting difficult, like say we're having a hard time chanting our rounds, still we're pushing ourselves because we're understanding that that this is part of it, and because I'm very much attracted to this process, the pretty sides of this process and also the not so pretty sides of it, I'm gonna continue on and I'm gonna keep pushing myself. And so that's Krishna's mercy. He makes it all so nice and all so attractive. Gives us the fuel. He's giving us the fuel every day to keep pushing. We just have to take it in whatever way we can. Just try to apply ourselves in whatever capacity we can.
Yeah, very true. I was thinking along with your point about how Krishna, like you had mentioned how it says in the purport, he appears for attracting for the benefit of the fallen souls. And I was thinking it made me think about how in different incarnations, how Krishna appears, but he's also benefiting like conditioned souls. So we see, and like when he comes as Krishna, the whole Kuru dynasty gets benefited. Even on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, they all get liberation, even the demons. You know, Kubja, she gets like completely purified, even though she like wants Krishna like a lusty way. He accepts that, and then she ultimately gets like purified. And then when he comes as Bhamanadev, you know, Bali Maharaj gets purified, and then also his sister, you know, said that his sister thought Bhamanadev was cute, you know, kind of had some motherly affection for him. And so in her next birth, she took birth as Putana. And then when she tried to kill Krishna, she ultimately got the position of being one of his mothers in the spiritual world. But originally, in one incarnation, as Bali Maharaj's sister, she kind of thought Bhavanadev was cute, like a motherly type way. So Krishna took that. So and then, oh gosh, what other incarnations? And then, yeah, I mean, there's so many examples that you can see in Bhagavatam how Krishna is benefiting everybody ultimately. Even just in the form of Lord Chaitanya, you know, like we can see that one the most, how he's liberating everybody, you know, teaching everyone to chant Hare Krishna. And so, yeah, it's really sweet. In every incarnation, Krishna is benefiting everyone. So,
Yeah.
we actually, I was thinking though, it's almost, I guess, 9:30 for you.
Yes.
And and I was thinking we could finish the chapter today, but this next text and purport is really long.
Yeah. No, we don't have to. Yeah, we can finish it next week. What
Okay.
we left off on? Oh, we're on the last verse, huh?
Yeah, we're on the last verse. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's got a pretty extensive purport.
Yeah, we don't. Let's not rush. Let's not rush it.
Yeah.
Save it for next week. Yeah.
Savor it.
Yeah, exactly. We might end up spending the whole class next week just on that last verse and never even start the chapter.
That might be, yeah, actually it looks pretty good, so it's probably true.
Yeah. Was there anything you wanted to add, Dr. Rich?
Yes, just real quick, thank you, Govinda. What Lavanga was saying about, I think said something about like the theory, and I think I was talking to devotees about what taking the philosophy and the theory and actually like putting it into practice and living it. And that's a big challenge for me, to you know, not just, you know, like sit here and think about it or just talk about it, like to actually, for me to actually live the philosophy and do the service and the reading and the chanting. That's so it's like putting the Krishna consciousness theory and philosophy into like real life practice, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Srila Prabhupada, I think it's Srila Prabhupada, he said that this isn't like an armchair philosophy where you have
Right.
like an image of like, you know, philosophers philosophizing and they're just philosophizing with each other and it doesn't go anywhere. They're just kind of talking philosophy, talking, but there's no practice. So yeah, so Krishna consciousness, like you're saying, definitely is active. Like it's something that we have to do. Yeah. Which makes it again, which ties it in more. I know I've spoken to like I think I've heard it from a few of Srila Prabhupada's disciples when I asked them like what drew them into Krishna consciousness, and I've heard a few of them mention that this process is all encompassing. It is like an entire lifestyle. It's not something that you just kind of you just do sometimes or this, but that Krishna consciousness involves your entire life. That really called them and really drew them in, because that's kind of like what we're all looking for. We're all looking for some kind of purpose, some kind of something to do with our life. Guru Maharaj, he mentioned it when there was like that whole craziness happening with the Capitol, where everyone was like storming the Capitol for I don't even know why. I don't know like what the story was,
They thought the can I say this on resume? Anyway, they thought that the election was like stolen. That was their belief that like it was taken from Trump or something.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And so it's like, so yeah, Guru Maharaj was talking about how they have nothing, there's nothing in their life, and so they're trying to grab onto something, like just naturally, all of us, we're naturally trying to grab onto something, and so, and if we don't have Krishna, if we don't have something, if we don't have Krishna, then we naturally try to fill that void with whatever we can. Um, but luckily, we do have Krishna, and so we get to sit here on Mondays and speak about Krishna and enhance our own practice with each other, in this really nice association that we have, which just encourages us to continue practicing, continue thinking about Krishna. And I just wanted to also mention that you brought up the pastime with puja, and for the first time, that I read the Krishna book to Oliver, to my son at night, like the kids one. They have like a kids version of the Krishna book.
Oh, good.
Hmm?
I was saying good because there's parts of that, but I just skip over parts of that pastime for my son.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did. I don't know the full pastime. I only know the pastime from what I read in the kids version of the Krishna book. But yeah, that pastime came up, and like for the first time when I was reading it, I like genuinely laughed. Like I thought Krishna was like really, actually really funny, because when he saw Kubja, she was I don't know if you know, but she was like hunchback, so she was kind of like hunched over, and so I guess like short in her stature. And when and when Krishna saw her, he said, "Oh, hello, tall woman." He's like joking. He's like making jokes. And Kubja's mood was just all like in awe and reverence. It was just, oh my lord, just like making all these prayers, and Krishna being very like light and joking. But then because Kubja's mood was like prayerful, and Krishna reciprocated with that, and that kind of like a I'm your lord kind of mood. But yeah, it's just very, I guess in my own practical experience, it's just been really nice to read these pastimes and see Krishna's personality. It makes me more drawn to him. Um, I just wanted, I don't know, you brought up that pastime, and I had that kind of connection with it, so I just wanted to.
It's a good pastime because she invites Krishna to her house, and he's like, "I'll come later," but he actually goes.
Yeah, yeah, that's also in the. He comes with, I think, is it Balarama or Guru?
Uddhava, I think.
Oh, he comes with Uddhava. Oh, okay, yeah. Right. Any last minute questions or points we wanted to bring about before we close? Okay, very cool. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mataji Lavanga. Thank you very much, Dr. Rich. Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj, for continuing to host the Zoom so that we can, um, speak about Krishna together. Um, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai, Srila Nasi Maharaj, Ki Jai. Please join us next week. Please stay tuned with Ishvara.org. Guru Maharaj is constantly putting new articles in there. And I think he's working on another book in Spanish that will be coming out. So,
Jai.
well, next week.
See you next week. Manas Maharaj Ki Jai. Hari Bol.
Hare Krishna.